It is the oldest sweetener known to mankind, and much more than just sugar. We know several hundred, if not several thousand, different types of honey worldwide. Apricot, a slight playwright's smell, some hay and pollen. So very fresh, earthy, animalistic. A very nice, strong, spicy, intense honey. Schwanberg Castle near Würzburg. This is where the elite of good taste meet. A training course for honey jurors. We are now going to do an exercise called Discover the Fake Honey. 5 kinds of honey, and only one is real. The others stretched with sugar syrup. Would you taste the real one? Then let's break it up. Who is 1? Who says 2? Who says 3? That's most of them. Number 3, forest honey, has not been changed by us. All other honeys have been changed. That's a shock, isn't it? You can't see it, you can't taste it. At the moment, the problem is that a lot of adulterated honey is flooding the German market. Fake honey, a lucrative business. Some customers ask for low prices. Then we offer a 50-50 mix. Pure enjoyment or adulterated honey? In search of the truth. Now look at one. You have already fetched a little water of nectar. A visit to Oliver Löwe. The honey of his bees can be found on many supermarket shelves. With 1,300 bee colonies distributed throughout the country, it is one of the top 10 largest beekeepers in Germany. Löwe and his colleagues are fighting against an invisible enemy. The biggest danger for Borussia beekeeping is not the honey that flows from other countries, but the adulterated alleged honey, which is not honey. The artificially produced. As a beekeeper, you have no way to compete with them in terms of price. Reloading at the edge of a cornfield. A farmer called early in the morning and the zucchinis are blooming. He needs those bees, and he needs them now. There is only a small window of time for pollination. Without bees, the harvest would be much lower or even completely absent. There is nothing better than working with animals in nature. And in the morning, when everyone is still asleep, you can experience nature in a way that no one experiences. From spring to autumn, the professional beekeeper travels through the country. He rarely sees his family during this time. In order to be able to work effectively and also earn money, you have to hike after the flower. The northernmost is the island of Sylt, where we produce our excellent heather honey. And the southernmost is the Black Forest. 100 tons per year, that's how much honey beekeeper Oliver Löwe produces. Market leader Langnese fills around 55 tea per day. The need? Huge. And yet prices are in the basement. On the world market, a kilo of honey costs only around 1.50 euros. Nowhere in the world can honey be produced at these prices. Everything that is in the price segment, 500 grams under 4 euros, is simply not possible. Review. Autumn 2024. Frontal reports on fake honey for the first time. Fake honey in German supermarkets? To find out what the rumors about adulterated honey are about, we had shopped at the big supermarket chains. Namely the honey-owned brands of Aldi, Edeka, Netto, Lidl, Rewe and Penny, as well as honey from market leader Langnese. The destination of our delivery, the laboratory of the Selvia company. Have fun in Estonia. The scientists here have developed a new method that has not yet been accredited. It analyzes the DNA in the honey to find out if it is real honey. Authentic honey has a profile that is undoubtedly different from altered or stretched honey. The results of the DNA analysis at that time, all the honeys from the supermarket that we sent in, the laboratory classifies as inauthentic. We can see that there is honey in it, but here this one plant is very dominant. That cannot be the case. The proportions are not right. And there are even more deviations from authentic honey. A scandal? At least not for the supermarkets. They all emphasize that their products are regularly tested and are genuine. When we asked, Edeka, which also owns Netto, answered it. Recognized authenticity tests were carried out. These showed no abnormalities. The big players in the honey business test their goods in large German private laboratories. They mainly rely on the so-called NMR method to detect fake honey. Aldi, as well as Penny and Rewe, complain that the DNA analyzers are not mature. Langnese therefore comes to the conclusion, quote, "The statement that the honey tested is not authentic is therefore false. The underlying investigation was not carried out neutrally, objectively and competently. So everything is okay?" We bring our honeys to a laboratory. Here, too, they analyze the DNA in the honey and come to almost the same conclusion. Everyone fails. Except for one from Aldi. Unfortunately, the analysis results show that the majority of these honey samples that they sent us for analysis are not to be classified as honeys. What we expect, what can be found in different organisms in honey, is not present or is present in combinations that make no sense. The DNA analyzers have consequences, at least in Austria. Spar, the country's largest supermarket chain, will remove all imported honeys from the shelves in December 2024. For honey from Austria, Spar board member Markus Kaiser tells us, the beekeepers vouch for their name on the label. In the case of imported mass-produced goods, for example, from Ukraine, Spar wanted to play it safe. It was important for us to be 100% sure that there was real honey in it. When we had the reports, we were relieved and put the products back on the shelf. Were you surprised that the others didn't react like that? To be honest, we were surprised that we were the only ones doing this. We would have expected the others to follow this straight and honest path as well. The fact is that our tests aroused the interest of the supervisory authorities in this country. Hello, Mr. Bowler. Food surveillance stand Freiburg. Hello. To be examined again every year. I would need a rehearsal again. That's what we have there. Whether honey is real or not is checked in Germany by officials like him. Thomas Krom's job is to ensure clean food. And anyone who deliberately sells adulterated honey is even liable to prosecution. In the beekeeper's cellar, the honey harvest from the previous year. Will Inspector Krom catch a honey scammer here? Probably rather unlikely. Anything to complain about? No, everything. The operation is neat, clean, really exemplary, you could say. Storage is right, everything is fine. Yes, you could say. But you can't say yet whether everything is okay with the honey and whether sugar syrup has been poured into it. The laboratory has to say that after the examination. In the long term, you can't determine that. What does your gut feeling say? Everything is fine here, for sure. The samples are taken to the honey laboratory of the state of Baden-Württemberg. Hello, once blossom honey. Thank you. Farewell. Here they checked 600 honeys last year. Even imported goods. With the same methods that supermarkets use, such as the NMR process. They found nothing. It is always the case that the counterfeiter is always one step ahead. The persecutor comes, the falsifier takes the next step, tries something new again. It has always been the case that the falsifiers always try something new. Something new, that's what they're trying to do here as well. After Frontal reported on the A tests, they took a close look at the results. They have high hopes for the new method. If you then look at how the falsifications take place in the meantime, then it is also important to consider more modern, different methods. Punching honey is now a science in its own right. Designer syrup, fructose-glucose ratio, amount of pollen, dyes, all meticulously stirred together. While the authorities are researching new test methods, we want to find out where our honey actually comes from. So back to the beginning, back to the glass and what is written on it. Non-EU agriculture from EU countries and non-EU countries. A forest honey from EU countries and non-EU countries. So the forest can be anywhere. The import statistics reveal that one country delivers more honey to Germany than any other. In 2024 alone, around 800 containers full of honey. Our next destination, Ukraine. In response to the Russian invasion, the EU is suspending tariffs on Ukrainian agricultural products, also on honey. As a result, Ukrainian honey is cheaper than ever and is exported en masse. We meet Yaroslav Mucha. He has been earning his living with beekeeping for 35 years. The conditions in Ukraine are almost perfect for beekeepers. Huge areas of rapeseed, sunflower, acacia, for huge honey harvests. Nevertheless, the situation for beekeepers like him is more difficult than ever. Our beekeepers, the farms, they all suffer from the price. The reason is simple. Fraudsters can produce practically unlimited amounts of sugar syrup. It is a simple process with plain sugar. While the prices for food, beehives or protective clothing are rising, beekeepers here get just 1.79 euros for 1 kilogram of honey. In addition, he says, the war has a direct impact on honey in the country. Many large bee colonies were destroyed by the war. The territories are occupied today. People have fled. What remains for us is not only economic damage, but also the loss of property, our bees, and a life in peace. And indeed, annual honey production in Ukraine is declining slightly. In contrast, the export of honey has increased rapidly. In some cases, more is exported than produced. Practically nothing is imported. How can a country export more honey than it produces itself? Something can't be right. We get the opportunity to talk to someone who might know more about it. A honey merchant who ships his goods all over the world. Canada, USA, Europe, Germany, Belgium, France. Most of Valentin Pankowski's customers are large honey apple companies that also supply the large German supermarket chains. At the current dumping prices, however, the business is hardly worthwhile for him either. His suspicion is that many would stretch honey with cheap sugar syrup. For some, this is apparently the only way to survive the price pressure. To be honest, I don't know exactly what's behind it. In recent years, countries like India have become very active. Why? Chinese honey does not have a good reputation in the industry. Specifically, this Chinese honey is also resold via third countries. Perhaps this explains why new countries are suddenly big on the market. India, Brazil, Vietnam. Valentin Pankowski, however, assures us that his honey is genuine. Every delivery is tested in German laboratories. We will still test how reliably these laboratories work. How is work done behind the scenes? To do this, we have to delve deeper into the honey business. His own frontal honey import company. And this is where the company headquarters are to be. I would perhaps stop the call here. Her name, Fake-Honig. We disguise ourselves as a regional honey trader looking for a supplier abroad for honey. Then we contact Ukrainian exporters whose honey ends up in German supermarkets. And indeed, the first reactions are not long in coming. A large retailer is back. A few days later, a phone call. The Ukrainians are currently in Germany on business. We shoot with a hidden camera. It runs left and right. They have just come in. We meet in a bakery. The managing director of the honey company is there. His employee translates. After a while, we come to the topic of honey adulteration. Our honey is clean. We have our own laboratory. We are already testing at the beekeepers. We also test again after filling. We notice that the honey from China is even cheaper than that from Ukraine. How do they do it? Yes, the price is lower in China, Vietnam, India, but the quality is not the best. You could also simply say that the honey is fake. It often comes to the EU via Poland. There is adulteration, say the Ukrainians, but it is not them, but the others. As a farewell, 2 canisters guaranteed real honey. Allegedly. Slowly we realize that the international honey trade has absolutely nothing in common with the idol of surrender bees on colorful flower meadows. It is a gigantic stream of containers that is almost impossible to keep track of. The most important suppliers for Europe are China, Ukraine, Argentina, Mexico, Chile, and Cuba, the most important suppliers. countries with large seaports. Honey is also traded intensively within Europe. We have an appointment with a man who has uncovered a big honey scam. Peter Madsen is an important player in the international fight against adulterated honey. Together with other beekeepers, he researches undercover. Like at this food fair in Paris. Madsen in conversation with a Chinese honey merchant. Where do you sell your honey? Germany, Great Britain. Then they talk about prices in the common authenticity test. The price depends on your selection. In England, the standard is simple, so the price is reasonable. Most customers from Europe buy honey that passes the NMR test and mix it with local honey. For Madsen, it is clear that this was only about smuggling adulterated honey through the controls. This is a disaster for beekeepers all over the world. We have no chance of competing with stretched honey that comes cheaply on the market. Only if the beekeepers stick together and defend themselves against fraud will something move. 10 years ago, Madsen Gross entered the honey business, wanting to make a fresh start in his career. He now sells his honey throughout Europe. It all started with 2 beehives and 50 kilograms of honey. That's how Mary's honey was born. With a photo of my daughter. It must be here somewhere. Ah, I found it. Here, Mary's honey. It was a great feeling. But now there is a big but. Now I'm stuck in the honey trap, along with beekeepers all over the world. Madsen and his colleagues regularly buy honey in supermarkets and have him tested on his own. Last year, a jar from a Lidl store in Lithuania. The result was that the honey is not okay and does not meet Lithuanian requirements because it contains sugar syrup. Madsen then informs the Lithuanian authorities and they react. The sample does not meet the requirements for authentic honey. Lidl is to withdraw the product from the market. Lidl has actually taken the adulterated honey off the shelves and explains to Frontal. In this case, we strongly disagree with the accusation that not all possibilities were used to detect a possible adulteration of the honey. The supermarkets don't know much about honey, nor can they. After all, they sell thousands of products and can't be the quality experts for everything in the range. The honey traders who supply the markets must first and foremost bear responsibility for such things. So who is responsible for the case in Lithuania? The retailer who sold it to Lidl is based in Poland. The company has weight, supplies large supermarkets, including chains from Germany and France. Mazurskim Jodi, in German Masurian honey. The company never responded to our question as to who adulterated the honey. We go there, shoot with a hidden camera. In the shop a wide assortment of Polish honey specialties. In addition, honey creams, honey shampoo, honey peeling. We are looking for the honey that flew off the shelf at Lidl in Lithuania. Do you also have this honey here? Multi-flower honey, 5 kilograms for 84 ZL. A little later, the saleswoman arrives with a canister, 5 kilograms of multi-flower honey. We can't test whether it's authentic, but we learned something about the origin. Ukraine, Poland, Lithuania, and China. In the past, Chinese honey was often suspected of being adulterated. This is this one from Mazursky Jody. We want to investigate this. All companies that want to export honey to the EU must be accredited. A total of 65 companies from China are listed. We made contact, pretending to be representatives of Fake-Honig. Intensive chats follow. A merchant introduces herself as Annie. What is your color preference? 35 to 50 millimeters light brown? Yes, that fits. Is there a risk that it will be exposed? No, there is no risk with the dye. E150D is important to adjust the color. Is that allowed? No, that's not allowed. Why do they ask me that? Because despite all this, they try to present their products in such a way that they can be easily incorporated into a honey. Sasha Rohn specializes in sugar syrup. We show him the chats with the Chinese traders. We are asked the same question over and over again. Honey that guarantees the NMR test, or not? It passes NMR. Ours consists of NMR, which is what most EU customers need. Then I ask myself, what kind of honey is this that is not supposed to pass this test? Either it is honey, in which case it passes the test, or it is not honey, in which case it probably does not pass this test. With the NMR test, you have to say that it is not related to ingredients, it is related to patterns. You get a lot of signals. A natural honey would be very rich in signals. If I take other honeys, perhaps much simpler, possibly also modified honeys, then they have much fewer ingredients and much fewer signals. Then a honey naturally stands out. If they offer me a honey that doesn't pass this test, then the risk of it being adulterated is pretty high, isn't it? That is exactly the conclusion. The honey that passes the NMR real-time test is well paid for by the Chinese. It costs significantly more. We order. 13 Chinese honey exporters send us samples and want to do business with us. The taste, smell, and consistency of the samples are practically always the same. The next goal is to visit the plant. For this purpose, we are looking for specialists who we can use as decoys. At a beekeeping fair, we meet Bernhard Hoeffel. The president of the European Professional Beekeepers is willing to travel to China disguised as an employee of Fake-Honig. For him, it is about the survival of the entire industry. Syrup is sold as honey. We compete with our hard-working honey with syrup. With very cheap, industrially produced syrup. As Fake-Honig's representatives, Bernhard Hoeffel and his colleague Dirk Walbrecht end up in China. Welcome to Shanghai. Our two decoys are on their way to their one meeting. The target company is one of the big players in China and is officially accredited for honey export to Europe. China is Europe's most important supplier of honey. No country exports to the EU anymore. The area west of Shanghai is considered the center of the Chinese honey industry. Bernhard Hoeffel and his companion Dirk Walbrecht. The two honey experts know what to look out for in order to unmask trickery with honey. but they have never been to China and are excited to see what is in store for them. The honey company they want to visit today has aroused our very special interest. She sells not only honey, but also sugar syrup. Quite legally. Welcome, Dirk and Bernhard. Our decoys are immediately invited by the friendly staff to a tasting. Instead of honey, the conversation quickly turns to the syrup, which the company also sells. This cannot be detected by German laboratories. The syrup really passes the NMR test? Yes, that's embarrassing. A syrup optimized for adulteration. So that was once again the confirmation that syrups can be used to stretch honey and still pass the NMR test. In the showroom of the company jars of international honey brands, supposedly business partners, take the high-speed train to the next station. What we have learned in the meantime is that adulteration of honey is also prohibited in China. Where it says honey on it, only honey may be in it. A report from state television. Undercover reporter in conversation with a honey factory owner. Some customers ask for low prices. Then we offer a 50-50 mix. If the price was higher, we wouldn't sell anything. That's why we use syrup. The only rule is that we don't do that with our own brand. Later, the Chinese reporters visit the syrup factory. They deliver 50,000 tons of sugar syrup here, as they say, at honey factories. Chinese police arrest honey scammers who try to escape. Scenes that prove why Chinese honey does not have a good reputation even in its own country, Rafi Fakli tells us. The Iranian-born researcher did research on stretched honey for her doctoral thesis. Today she lives in China. The fact that adulteration is taking place does not surprise her. Due to the enormous global demand, it is difficult to prevent honey adulteration. People demand huge amounts of honey. The honey that beekeeping companies produce simply does not cover this.
But it doesn't match the demand of the customer.
Therefore, it is almost automatic for the honey industry to increase yields in order to satisfy the needs of its customers. Many Chinese apparently suspect that their own honey could be laced with sugar syrup. What this means in practice is examined by our German beekeepers Bernhard Hofel and Dirk Walbrecht in the Chinese supermarket. Rows of shelves full of imported honey. Langnese, acacia honey, 19 euros. That's 1 kilogram. What is the price? 27 euros, Black Forest. 27 euros for Langnese honey. But not a mix, but 100% made in Germany. It's huge. The next stop of our decoys, a syrup factory. It's huge. One thing immediately catches the eye. The dimension in which syrup is produced here is huge. Fructose glucose syrup, an inexpensive and popular sweetener in the food industry. Only it must not be mixed with honey. Gigantic plants are humming, not bees. They say that customers in Europe and all over the world are supplied from here. Our customer request, syrup for honey adulteration. Our decoys ask quite openly. How can you mix honey with syrup and still pass the NMR authenticity test in the laboratory? That's difficult. This is our special technology. We have found that they produce NMR-safe syrup there that passes the authenticity test for honey fastness. They didn't want to reveal the secret recipe. But we will get the recipe for adulteration later. The ratio of syrup to honey depends on the purity of the honey and its origin.
Das Verhältnis von Sirup zu Honig hängt von der Reinheit des Honigs und seiner Herkunft ab.
30% syrup, 70% honey, or 40% syrup and 60% honey pass the NMR analysis. A guide to adulteration, directly from the syrup producer. Is this just a brazen exception or something more? We visit a syrup dealer after a 3-hour drive, arrival at a neat office complex. Again, our decoys ask for syrup for fake honey. Some factories in China only use 25% honey. The rest is simply syrup. Afterwards, they diligently advertise their product. After an intensive week, the China tour for Bernhard Hofel and Dirk Walprecht of Fake-Honig comes to an end. A week of intensive insights into the Chinese honey business. Our suspicions have been confirmed. The adulteration of honey is not a pipe dream, but a lucrative business. The Chinese companies do not respond to our inquiries. We can marvel at how brazenly Chinese syrup producers are now back at our company headquarters. They openly offer their products for sale. Honey-grade syrup with B enzyme for honey. High-quality syrup for honey. We order 2 syrups and make our way to the laboratory. Can we adulterate honey with these 2 Chinese syrups and thus trick the German laboratories? In other words, pass those tests that the supermarkets rely on? We want to test this with a self-experiment. On 260 we added 25 grams. About 10 to 1.10%. Food chemists Sascha Rohn and Clemens Kanzler ensure that everything runs properly. We stretch supermarket honey and add 2 syrups in different concentrations. They are very different. This is due to the various ingredients that are in honey, and because of the higher water content in the syrup. But in the long run, if you mix it a little longer and stir and spread it nicely, it merges into each other. This is where fake honey is produced. Only 2 honey samples are left unchanged for control. Does it still smell like honey? In any case, I notice it smells. It smells nice, a bit sweet, caramel, honey. It smells already, as it should. That's exactly the point. The mixer runs all night. Clear expectations of the authenticity tests threaten. I think that dominant proportions of syrup must definitely be identified. We now send our samples to the private honey laboratories, which also test the honey of the large supermarkets. A few days later, we learn more. Have the laboratories uncovered our fake honey? First of all, the results of the so-called trading analytics. In other words, what is at least what is required by law according to the EU honey regulations. All 8 samples, including those with 50% syrup content, passed the test. The fake honey is not noticeable. Specifically, they are not suitable to recognize these procedures in order to detect the falsification. If the falsification is so good that it can no longer be identified with such tests, then it cannot be found. We had further tests done. Elaborate special tests, such as Lidl, Aldi, and Co., including the so-called Sicily NMR test. Result for the one, Chinese syrup. The tests are effective for all three samples. This fake honey is exposed as adulterated. In this case, it was probably the case that individual ingredients were missing in the syrup or in the final honey. The whole pattern was so striking that it could be guessed that it was not honey. Then the same tests with China syrup too. In the mixture with 10% syrup. Result, authenticity test passed. And even with 20% syrup, the fake is not noticeable. Again, test passed. All in all, these are already the best test methods you have. But if you get into a special case where even these tests no longer work, then you may have found a product that has been prepared so well, where you have thought so much about it beforehand that it is not noticeable. The renowned QSI laboratory has not detected some syrup adulterations. In response to frontal inquiry, it writes, the investigations were commissioned online, and otherwise usual consultation did not take place. Therefore, no supplementary tests could be used that would have pursued a broader range of investigations. The fact is, we have booked an extensive analysis package, just as honey traders have recommended to us. Our experiment has been completed and shows that the current methods are apparently not sufficient to unmask every adulterated honey. We are closing our frontal fake honey company Merrier. At the end of our research, we get a message. A German honey trader, who wishes to remain anonymous, writes,
Die Rechnung ist einfach. Kippe ich 20% Sirup in meinen Honig, würde sich meine Marge fast verdoppeln. Gegen solche Konkurrenten hat man keine Chance.
Honey adulteration, a huge business. This is bad news for the beekeepers and their bees. Many have already closed their businesses. But Oliver Luva does not want to give up. The attractive profession has not lost, even if there are these problems with the adulterated honey at the moment. But the passion and the work with the bees outweigh a lot. But nevertheless, it must remain a profitable job, which is now being endangered more and more if some measures are not taken. If you love real honey, there is probably only one thing left. Buy the sweet gold where it is made. Directly in the farm shop, at the beekeeper you trust. You are proud of the product you harvest. You want to harvest this honey. I don't want to Turkish it with syrup or flavor enhancers. That would hurt me if I knew on the shelf that there was such a shitty product in front of me. I couldn't reconcile that with my conscience. Professional beekeepers in Germany will only survive if supermarkets can prove that they sell real honey at fair prices.